All right, looks like we're live. Hello, everybody out there who may be watching or who may be watching later on. Tonight, we're going to be doing a session 0 for our Ashes of Heaven game. And this is going to be kind of a real loose, not very formal kind of affair this evening. We're just going to kind of be working on character questions and putting characters together, making some decisions for the game whenever it actually is going to launch. Going over the way the Kung Fu system is going to work, because it is very much a departure from the norm. It's going to be a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game, aside from that. And I'm trying to think of anything else I might have to warn you guys. Oh, language. I'm an adult, and right now my kid's not at home, so my language is probably going to be bad. And if you don't like that, now's your chance to turn it off. So I will go ahead and let my players introduce themselves, and then we'll get the ball rolling here. Carol, why don't you lead us off?
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm going to be playing a Casbah bard, I guess, in this. I don't know really very much about any of the subject of what we're doing, so I hope to learn and enjoy the game and play with all these great people. I don't have anything to really push or anything except that Absolute Tabletop group in Facebook is really a wonderful place to get to know gamers, wonderful people, have a good time, set up games.
Absolutely. Yeah, as a matter of fact, this game was set up there. All these fine people are members of that Facebook group. I echo that sentiment exactly. Head on over to the Absolute Tabletop official group, I believe is the whole title. But yeah, it's a great group, and it brings us people like Alan.
Hi everyone, my name is Alan and I run the YouTube channel Check for Traps. Basically just run a bunch of games on that channel, and most of these people have played I think all of these people have played in one of my games. So you can definitely check them out. Definitely more games to come. Definitely featuring Jeremy and Jeff here in the next couple of games coming up on the channel. So definitely check that out. Love Jeremy's content, love all these guys. They're great players and everything. So definitely check out their channels, check out their content. And just as everyone else is probably going to say, check out Absolute Tabletop official Facebook group, as it is a wonderful community, supports GMs and players alike. And I mean, that's where we all met. And I think it's a fantastic place to meet other gamers. And I'll pass it on.
Absolutely. And that'll bring us to players like Dave.
Hey folks, I'm Dave, and I have a YouTube channel. I haven't updated it recently, but I need to. Mornblade Gaming. Excited to play with this group of players. Definitely met through AbTab group, echoing that sentiment. If you haven't yet, check out Oath of the Frozen King on Kickstarter. It's got, I think, another 22 days or 23 days, so well worth looking at. I'm going to be playing a fighter named Longway Luke, human variant. Haven't totally settled on all his details, but I know he's a Ronin. So that's me, and I'll pass it on. Hot potato.
Absolutely. And Jeff, you're the hot potato.
All right, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Having a little bit of tech issues with my normal mic. But that'll be fixed by game time. I'm Jeff. I run the YouTube channel and Counterbalance. Looking forward to this game. As everyone else said, absolute tabletop. Check it out. Also, I'm going to be playing Kenji. He is a water sorcerer, using the water origin. Still working out some of the fine details, but that's what I got so far.
Perfect. And speaking of fine details, Scott.
Hey everybody, I'm Scott. Probably seen me not only in Alan's Monster Hunters games that we randomly run, but also the Dragon Grin Chronicles that Drake runs, and Tales of Tomotir that DM Tai runs. And I'm going to be playing a Moon Elf fighter, Zenwu Tsukiko. Yes, named after my daughter. I had to do it just because this was fitting for it. But other than that, just really looking forward to getting into the setting. Beat the crap out of your messenger with requests for you to run this series, or at least something in this series online. We get to read your detailed stories of what's happening in your home game, and we all were just quite jealous and finally convinced you to run it here. So can't wait for this, and back to you, boss.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, this is there's a home game that I run called White Lotus Black Jade that is kind of set in the Oriental based analog of my homebrew world for D&D. It's kind of an amalgam of Imperial China and feudal Japan. It's kind of a healthy mix between the two, but with plenty of Dungeons and Dragons kind of laid over the top. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of all told through the viewpoint of Asian cinema, wuxia, things of that nature. So it's got a healthy dose of kind of Western appreciation for the East, if you will. I am by no means an expert of anything Asian, and I don't claim to be. I've just watched a whole crap ton of wuxia movies ever since I just started doing research for this game. So I'm a pseudo expert, if you will. So yeah, this game is going to be set in the same world, the same setting, only 20 years prior to the game that I'm running at home. So that is what Scott was referencing. And unless you guys can think of any other points of order, then we'll go ahead and get down to business. Yeah, cool. All right. So like I said, it's going to be very loose, very informal. You guys just let me know what it is that you want from me, and I will do my best to facilitate it.
All right, going. Never been shy about this. So definitely get into this the kung fu aspect of the detail. I guess you have certain maneuvers and stuff like that the characters can do. This is something that I'm definitely interested in, having a martial arts background, how you handle this in game.
Absolutely. So it's kind of a long story, and I won't bore everybody with too many of the details, but effectively I was looking for a system that would work, that I felt would work as an add-on to D&D for a while, and couldn't find it. I eventually found one that I really liked, because one of the things that's always bothered me about trying to do something like Kung Fu in Dungeons and Dragons is Kung Fu fighting is very reactionary. It's very split-second decision, reacting to what your opponent's doing, and then sometimes reversing it, things of that nature. And a turn-based game system just doesn't capture that very well. And there's still issues of that, even with this system, but I think it helped get rid of a lot of it. So essentially, I found a game system that I liked, couldn't figure out how to pair it with Dungeons and Dragons, ended up kind of working it through a couple of different systems and came up with what we use now. And it's kind of a variant of the AGE system. I don't know how familiar you are with like the Dragon Age role-playing game, or the game that Will Wheaton ran online called Titan's Grave. Both very cool games. And it's essentially, there is a chart, a table for each of the different styles. And each one of those has a list of stunts on it associated with a cost. And whenever you go to roll initiative at the very beginning, you're going to roll a number of d6 based on the style you're doing and the stats that are tied to it, etc. And then whenever you have those d6 rolled, you will set those aside. And from then on, you'll purchase stunts from that list with pairs. Yes, I will definitely send out cheat sheets. So I have this little part here that I wrote up about kind of Kung Fu and Kung Fu action. I'll read through it first and see if that answers questions, and if not, we'll go into more detail. Inevitably, we'll go into more detail. But I wrote it so you get to sit through it. Okay, how does one define Kung Fu? Does it simply mean to fight? Or, like the clerics, paladins, and monks would have you believe, does it mean to summon the spirit of the crane and the tiger? Kung Fu. It means supreme skill from hard work. A great poet has reached Kung Fu. The painter, the calligrapher, they can be said to have Kung Fu. Even the cook, the one who sweeps steps, or the masterful servant can have Kung Fu. Practice, preparation, endless repetition, too wasted breath. That is the way, the only way, that one acquires Kung Fu. In addition to the normal parts of a character's turn, attack, move, bonus, and reaction, there is a new part of your turn called the Kung Fu action. When initiative is rolled, a player will roll a number of d6 equal to their Kung Fu score, which is based upon the 2 combined ability modifiers relevant to their chosen style. If a stunt is rolled, at least 2 dice showing the same value, that character may then spend these dice to purchase certain moves from the list that is available to the style that they rolled under. On your turn, you may perform the stunt or stunts that you can purchase from your Kung Fu action. A character's Kung Fu dice pool loses at least 1 die every round, even if they were not spent to purchase a stunt even. Dice used to purchase stunts count for this loss. So when the first person involved in a conflict is out of dice, that person announces it to the DM. And at the onset of the next round, everyone involved in the conflict may re-roll any of their spent Kung Fu dice to add back into their pool. Again, we'll go over all this in better detail. I know we're kind of flying through it here, but okay. A student only has access to the entries on their Kung Fu's stunt list that are a value of 3 or less. When using any Kung Fu stunt that requires an attack roll, a student may add one of their skills appropriate ability modifiers to the attack roll, and they get to choose. A sensei gains 1 additional die every time he rolls for his Kung Fu dice with that particular style. In addition, she may also adjust 1 die per turn by lessening the value shown on the die by 1 point. So taking a 6 to a 5, etc., to easier match up pairs. A sensei can access the entries on their style's Kung Fu stunts list that are of a value of 6 or less. When using any Kung Fu stunt that requires an attack roll, the sensei may add 1 of their abilities to the attack roll, the other to the damage. A master gains 1 additional die, so 2 above a student, whenever they roll for their Kung Fu dice pool. And in addition, they may adjust 2 dice per turn, changing the value either up or down. In addition, she also may change 1 of the dice by 2 points instead, if she so wishes. A master has access to all of the entries on the Kung Fu stunt list, and using any of the stunts that require an attack roll, they get to add both of their style's appropriate ability modifiers to both the attack and the damage. There's some stuff about potentially learning new moves, things of that nature, which we'll get into later on if it becomes relevant. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. That's the overview, if you will. Like I said, I know we went through it kind of fast, so I'm sure there are questions. So have at it. What you got? I am not keeping up with chat.
Okay. So just going off the tail end of what you said there, with what was it? You could possibly learn new moves. Where this is going to be like almost like a mini campaign, is there a possibility of time spent with other people that you learn one of their moves, perhaps?
Possibly. There's different mantras, and each of the mantras has a certain number of schools that fit into it, and you can only learn schools from a similar mantra of what you have. So, for example, like you were thinking of going with Mantis, I think is what you were doing. So Mantis is a fluidity style. So you could learn Crane and Peacock, which are included within that. So yeah, you and Alan's character, who is Crane, could definitely kind of teach each other other moves. And the way that I'm kind of treating it is almost like spells for a wizard. Like you have to, there's rules that I kind of put in place for how much time you spend. Then you have to kind of roll to see if you're able to learn it. And if you don't, then you have to kind of start your trading period over again, things like that. But as of right now, we'll see. We'll just kind of cover the basics. And then if we need to, we'll get into the more specifics later.
Oh, no, absolutely. That was just the tail end of your
Absolutely.
thing. So it was fresh in my mind. So I wanted
Sure.
to just ask it right quick because that's cool either way.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, there's actually a couple of instances in my in White Lotus Black Jade where they've actually been able to learn moves that were depicted on a mural on a wall, like inside of a temple, things of that nature.
Yeah, I
so
can
that kind
definitely
of stuff
see
would
like
be possible.
finding some sort of like scroll or something that would depict like just the kata,
Exactly.
you know, imagery, and then just try to pick it up there. Probably would take longer than if you actually had a Sifu train you in the actual movements as you're trying to decipher what the movements on the scroll are. But from what I was getting from what you were saying, it sounds so you take your two attributes, whatever your style is. So let's just take Crane, because that's the style that my character will be using, which
Sure.
is Dex and Wisdom. So let's just say my pool was 5. So three from Dex, 2 from Wisdom. So I have a pool of 5, right? So I roll that, and then that's like, well, let's just say that's on my first turn. So since I rolled my Kung Fu, then my next roll, whether I got the stunt or not, is going to be 4 dice. Is that correct?
No, so
Or only if I get a stunt?
you will roll whenever I call for initiative at the beginning of combat. You'll roll
Okay.
your Kung Fu dice pool, and you'll set that aside and hold on to it.
Okay.
And if it comes to your turn, and say that you're trying to purchase the number, the stunt on your chart that is a 3-point stunt, and you have a pair of 4s, you could spend your pair of 4s to purchase your number 3 stunt and your number 1 stunt if you wish. So if you don't have pairs, you can't purchase one. So you don't always get the opportunity to do it.
But you had mentioned, not to cut you off, but to
Sure.
ask, you had mentioned that say he rolled a 4 and a 5, he could forego 1 off the 5 to make it 2 pairs of 4s, which in essence would turn it into 2 pairs of 3s and 2 pairs of 1s, right?
If he is a sensei,
Oh, okay.
he has the opportunity to roll any one of his dice, every one of his turns, to roll one of his dice down in value 1 point. So say you had, no pairs, but you had a 3 and a 4. On your first turn, if you were a sensei, you could drop your 4 to a 3. You now have a pair of 3s to spend those to do your 3-point stunt.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot up front. It sounds really, really hectic and confusing, but I promise once you get it down, it's pretty smooth. It's a smooth addition to the game.
So how do you get to be a sensei?
Good
That's
question.
what I was thinking.
Good question. At the same time that you roll your ability scores, is the chance that you have to either go up to the next rank within the style that you already have, or become a student in a new style. The choice is up to you.
Are we starting at the student level?
Yes, you will be. So
Okay.
whenever most classes, I believe, roll at 4th level. So whenever you hit 4th level is the chance that you would be able to either pick up a new school or become a sensei. There is one addendum to becoming a sensei. Once you reach 4th level, you do not automatically become a sensei. You have to pick up a student. It means you have to find somebody who is willing to follow you around. It's akin to a Padawan from Star Wars. They will adventure with you. They will have class levels. They will gain experience. They get a quarter of the experience that you get. So their leveling is slower, but they do get levels.
So this would be like an NPC?
Yes, absolutely.
Or,
That you will
or
control.
can I pick up one of the other players?
I hadn't thought of that. We'll see.
Only if you stay in your level, and then we go into your style.
That's the way it would have to be.
And then we're back to what I commented at the end of your speech. So yeah. You can learn other people's styles.
Yeah. So, yeah, the intention is that it's an NPC that just adventures with you, and you guys would control them. And however much personality and screen time or whatever that you decide to give them is completely up to you. In our home game, I actually had one of the players that decided that his student was the one that betrayed the party, and he's now dead, and now he doesn't have access to his sensei moves. So he hasn't found a new student yet. So it's just an added kind of element to the game where some people are very protective of their students, and some people let them run in first because they've got more hit points than they do. So it's been fun so far, and I think it adds something.
And I would imagine that these student NPCs follow the NPC rules as far as, you know, if you don't treat them right, all that kind of stuff, then they could leave on their own, right? Like, you know,
Yes.
I don't want to train with you because you don't feed me and you keep whacking me with your bamboo cane all the time, and I didn't even do anything.
Absolutely.
or you're not teaching me or whatever, right?
You mean sort of like our dungeon master?
I haven't started beating you yet.
Yet.
That is the
Once.
optimal word. Once.
Yeah. The intent is obviously present.
So yeah, especially in as far as the NPCs leaving and things like that, the only thing that, you know, I would say in addendum to what might normally be listed in the DMG or wherever that is from is to keep in mind the cultural expectations. You know, a lot of times people who became students of a particular master may not have liked the master very much, at least in the beginning, but they stayed because they, you know, somebody had given up, you know, a lot of money, or because their family told them that was the right thing to do, or what have you. Yeah, so as far as, go ahead.
You mentioned experience, and I just wanted to, I mean, sometimes, you know, obviously we're going to be playing multiple sessions and hopefully growing. I guess we're going to be awarding experience at the end of each session and then managing it that way. Because in some games, like home games, we typically just wave experience and then go as a group based on story elements or plot lines, XP or milestones.
Yeah, milestones is usually what that's called, and I've never done that myself. And we'll kind of see how it goes. I typically do XP, and it's usually awarded not only through combat but also through roleplay, figuring out puzzles, uncovering things that were, you know, hidden, things of that nature. But the first few levels at least tend to go pretty quick, so we'll probably do that at the beginning, and then if it's just not fast enough or we're not comfortable with it, we can definitely switch over to doing milestones after that. I'm comfortable either way.
Yeah, you know, Jared, now I'm thinking about just experience, and you don't have to use this for this game or whatever. This is just me spitballing.
Sure.
And you know, you could possibly use this in the future or whatever. But thinking about it, like if you had XP for, you know, advancing in character levels, but you also had Kung Fu XP, right? So at the end of every session, just like XP, you get Kung Fu XP. And then if you, during your downtime, say if you spent your downtime training on your Kung Fu, you could gain more XP in Kung Fu. And then you could use that to buy more moves, specifically for Kung Fu versus...
Or become a sensei.
Yeah, or, you know, whatever. But that XP is specifically for Kung Fu stuff versus character level advancement stuff. So I've seen that done in other systems. Don't have to use it for that one. I just thought it was could be something there.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'll take it into consideration to kind of see if I can't work out in my head about how that would work with like the charts and things that I already have established, to see if I can't work out like a purchasing system, a currency, if you will. So I'll definitely keep it in mind.
Yeah, that's just an ability tree. It's common in any RPG video game.
Yep. Cool.
All right, so let's...
did you guys understand the part about re-rolling spent dice? Would you like for me to go over that in better detail? Yeah? Okay.
Go over it.
Absolutely. No, I don't mind at all.
I
That's
probably missed that
exactly
while I
what-
was doing
No,
it.
that's exactly what tonight is for. And even during the game, I don't mind stopping and asking questions or answering questions. That's kind of one of the things about as a DM that I've always liked is teaching people, and not just teaching you how to do it for that moment, but actually teaching you how to do it, how to understand it. So yeah, the way that the end of the round typically goes is I'll call for Kung Fu Drain. And the way that that works is if you haven't purchased a Kung Fu stunt during your turn that time, then you lose one of your die. You choose. And whenever somebody has either spent or lost all of their dice, you let me know. And immediately after the Kung Fu Drain, everybody who's involved in the conflict gets to re-roll the dice that they've spent and add it to the existing pool. Make sense? Okay, so that
you're
way,
almost encouraged to utilize it because it'll
Yes,
grow.
sir. Well,
But if
yeah,
you don't
won't
use it,
ever
then you're
get
going to
more-
lose it, right?
Right, absolutely. And there's certain situations where you just won't be able to. You know, like if you're stuck across a ravine from somebody, obviously it's kind of hard to kung fu them. It's possible if you have like a fantastic jump and those kinds of things, but for the most part, it comes up where there's situations where you're like, well, I just can't get there, so I'll just have to burn a die.
Or to prove a point. Patience, something, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know of anything else that I could just jump off the platform with. So as long as you guys if you have any more specific questions, I can give you more pointed answers. If not, we'll just find something else to talk about.
Well, we were talking about like doing setting up our characters.
Mhm.
What do we need to do with that?
As far as
Like-
generating stunts, or not
Yeah,
stats.
stats. Yeah, those things.
Okay. I'm good with either standard array or the basic point buy, whatever that is, 27 points, I think, something like that. I don't have my book with me. Shame on me.
Yeah, it's 27.
Yeah, it's 27 points.
Cool. Yeah, whichever you would like to do, either way.
Okay. So then I don't really have to change anything that I've already figured out.
Good.
So I'm going to just get this out there that I have a surface knowledge, but I'm nowhere near as knowledgeable as Alan and Scott have shared with us, and I appreciate that so far. So I'm probably going to be asking questions and such,
Sure.
related to that during sessions, but it'll obviously snowball as we play. Question for you though. I mean, I've got two builds that I could go with. One is a Dex Charisma Strong, and one is a Strength. More Strength Constitution build for a Ronin. Now, I would be happy with either. So I put the question to you as, what do you envision a samurai? Because I'm seeing one with the Dex build being very acrobatic, utilizing the tools of the samurai, but more going two-handed fighting. And in that case, I was thinking like the Snake Clan, because I think they're Dex Charisma, and he would also be dual wielding, which is the two fangs of the snake. Whereas the other build could work as well. But what do you think?
Well, one of the things that I definitely want to put out front here, and a lot of people will cringe at this, but samurai is not a class in this setting. It is a
Right.
status, a status, that you can rise to, and it's kind of like being knighted, essentially, in this setting. So while, so to answer your question, a samurai can have whatever kind of stat array at all, because a bard could be a samurai, a rogue technically could be a samurai. So any array of stats would technically work for a samurai. But if you're talking about going very classic swordsman, things of that nature, if you're talking katana, a strength would be a better call, because in this setting, I'm treating katanas stats-wise just like a longsword, which is a versatile weapon. So that would definitely suit a strength build much better.
Yeah, my suggestion would be for the classic samurai, the sword, you know, what we all envision a samurai to be. I would say, I mean, there's a couple ways you could do it in the game. The more straightforward way mechanically would be a go fighter. Your fighting style should be dueling. Well, it doesn't have to be dueling, but dueling is one way for the fighter. If you want that social status right off the bat, you could probably go take the noble background, and just don't necessarily dump your charisma. At least have like a 10, or I would go at least a 12 to have a +1. That'll get your charisma and up to, so that you can have that air of nobility about you, those kinds of stuff. That would be like the most straightforward way. So noble background, fighter, dueling. Take the long sword, take the short sword for your wakizashi. If you want to go more the monk route, then I would say probably do something like I'm doing, which is the kensai, which is focused on weapons, and then just focus on the katana as being your sole weapon. So if you want to go more the martial arts route.
Yeah, to throw a further log onto the fire, you could also go paladin, which would kind of bring you back towards a little bit more of a D&D type class, but it does function in this setting as well. There's a little more deity worship in this setting than there is in typical Asian culture. So there's the same kinds of deities that are in the rest of the world, because in a D&D type setting, the gods make themselves known. They show their powers. It's, sometimes they even walk amongst mortals. So it's kind of hard to dismiss their existence entirely. But a large portion of the people in the Mysi Empire worship their ancestors, or spirits. Spirit of the mountain, spirit of the river, spirit of the forest, things of that nature. Fighter, paladin. Even if you went something like, bard as, path of valor, or college of valor. Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could play it that could be really interesting and unique, honestly.
Cool. I think that I'll stick then with the fighter battle master sort of, and with the variant I took the martial adept at first level, so that'll give him some even more maneuvers outside of kung fu maneuvers. So I'll just be all over the place with all these dice.
Maneuvering all over. Absolutely.
And Dave, I would also, even though you're not going the paladin route, I would look at the paladin oath system and just change your oath to the oath of Bushido, and look up the tenets of Bushido, and just kind of follow that if you're actually going for that traditional samurai.
Yeah. And the more I'm following what Bushido was, samurais, technically, they weren't necessarily evil, but it was all left to the interpretation of the individual. The samurai themselves seemed to interpret the Bushido code, because there were so many of them probably at certain times. Now, to your point about it's a level or a station, it sounds like I probably didn't attain that prior to second or third level, which is understandable.
Well, you could have been born into it, for that matter.
Well, and that was the plan, is that the house was massacred due to being, and so I'm taking a dishonored noble background for that route. And so which clan would fall into strength and constitution? Is there one?
The style is Ram, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, strength and con is Ram.
And they're
See, I just
probably
envision this big nasty samurai, like almost barbarian style, with like one of those big knobby like clubs, just walking
Tetsubo.
around bashing things
Yeah,
as a
Tetsubo.
barbarian.
Tetsubo, yeah.
Yeah. In this setting, the Ram clan is kind of up in the north, to the north of Crane, and they're kind of between Crane and the mountains, and so they deal with a lot of barbarians from the mountains. They tend to be kind of gruff. In White Lotus Black Jade, the home group, that's the two clans that I gave them the choice of in the beginning, was to either be Ram or Crane. And it's led to some pretty interesting role playing because they're very Hatfield and McCoy with each other. Kind of a exercise in opposites, if you will.
And that could be an interesting dynamic between our characters, Dave, because my character is coming from the Crane clan. Although he is a monk, so he tries to set aside, and he grew up in a monastery in the mountains and kind of away from his clan to begin with, outside of the clan members that are there in the Wudang Temple. But, as a monk, they try to set aside such things and try to go, they seek inner peace and all that kind of stuff. So they try to set aside all that stuff like clan disputes and whatnot. But it could still serve as an interesting aspect between our characters that we may not always agree on the same aspects due to different points of view.
Agreed.
Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Definitely. I like that.
In the home game, I actually set it up to where the port town that exists between the two territories, who in y'all's era is actually currently controlled by the Ram. It's called Zhengzhou, and it has been disputed back and forth between the two clans for hundreds of years, bloodily at times. And I actually set it up to where I took aside each of the clans separately, and I told them a story, and I told them two different versions of the same story. And one clan believes that they're the rightful owners of this city, and the other clan believes that they're the rightful inheritors. And so so even being a monk and being a little more zen about, worldly ties, I would imagine there's some things that your character probably still accepts as truths that may or may not be so. On both sides. But yeah, that would be fun to have in the party for sure. Go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. If I'm in the Snake Clan, which I think is going to work out for my character looking at it, what other clans would I have like some sort of tie to? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to have a tie with another player character, and I haven't really come up with anything.
Well, I think Jeremy, you suggested that having one of those 3 or 4 items, not all of those 3 or 4 items.
No, if at all possible, I would like one of each of those from you guys. So yeah, a connection to another PC, a connection to an NPC, which you guys are free to invent, and then one secret that you let me know ahead of time. And as far as how you could have that kind of a connection, Carol, I mean, people will travel between the clans. It's not something that everybody does, but it is possible. So especially coming from a merchant family, it's very possible that you could have a merchant from one of the other clans who's a frequent visitor to your house or what have you.
Well, I can come up with an NPC easily, but they're like, hey, who out there wants to know my character?
Well,
guys, who am I going to work with here?
That NPC could have a direct connection to one of the other PCs, and that NPC could be your connection.
And speaking to that, I had imagined that Luke had quite likely, since he had been dishonored, had just basically gone around like a sellsword trying to make his way in life, and that being like a caravan guard, mercenarying for maybe merchants or nobles as a bodyguard. So it's quite likely that I traveled probably as far from home as possible because I didn't want to stay near the Ram clan's lands because, in the event that I were recognized, someone might decide to challenge me and, take me out.
Right.
or vice
I'm-
versa.
I'm
Could
just like
cause
this-
complications.
I think I'm the slightly spoiled daughter of a merchant family that's kind of coming up in the world. That's how I see her. Her older brother's going to take over the merchant side of it, so she's free to study music and adventure and make trouble and poke her cat nose into things they don't necessarily need to be in. She could travel with the caravan and meet Luke that way if he's the guard. Or one of her family's caravans that she's traveling with.
He could just be a regular. Like, he knows that it's steady work, and so he's constant. Your family is constantly sending stuff in and out, short, long distance. So he's just a regular
Sure.
and knows that it's steady feed, and you seen him enough times. Or he could technically be your bodyguard because you're supposedly this like kind of protected princess. Maybe he's been hired on for that.
Yeah, he could have even stopped his wandering in your area because he found regular work.
Yeah, and it would make sense, speaking to Alan's point, that possibly being close to the your temple, that you guys may have been one of the first guys that I ran into or took kindness on me in the state of, because I was basically a fugitive. I'm imagining that the house was slaughtered and he's, lived and got away somehow, and I haven't, written that out. But if it
Sure.
needs to be played out, we can do that. But I would imagine that he got out and, is trying to, was looking for looking for a friend.
Yeah, so I went ahead and shared the version of the map that I have. This is the version from White Lotus Black Jade, so it's kind of 20 years past where you guys are going to be playing, but it still kind of gives the general idea of where some of the clans are kind of located. The red area here is Ram Clan. This is Crane Clan here. And this is the city Zhengzhou that I was talking about. The purple way down here is Snake Clan. Mantis Clan is this light green out here. Somebody was possibly thinking about Scorpion, which is this magenta color here. I think, am I missing anybody's clan? Dragon. Good news for you, Jeff. The Dragon Clan didn't survive the War of the Black Snows. So their lands were kind of in this area here.
We're going to change history, though.
Maybe. Maybe.
Did the Mantis take him out?
The Mantis took over some of their land afterwards. Definitely.
I'm not sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, so regardless of where you guys are going to begin your character's tale, the story where we are going to start will actually be in the Qingjiang Pass here. We're going to be starting at kind of a remote outpost.
Just to clarify, where's Wudang Mountain? Where me and Alan's characters are going to be?
I don't know, to tell you the truth, where you guys had kind of pictured it. But I was kind of thinking, since Crane's here, Mantis is over here, somewhere kind of in between. This place here is neutral territory. It's not currently kind of claimed by any of the clans, so I was kind of assuming up in this mountain range here.
That seems like it's probably one of the highest peaks there too, so
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah. And I would also imagine that those temples are not easily found.
No.
Like, you could probably travel those mountains and still just miss where the temple would be unless you knew or somebody guided you to.
Yeah, I agree.
Trying to go for that whole seclusion away from the troubles of the world kind of stuff. And then just to kind of circle back on what you were saying before on the whole, like, even though I'm Zen kind of thing, which is actually kind of fitting because I'm looking at my flaw, which is my flaw is I harbor dark, bloodthirsty thoughts that my isolation and meditation failed to quell.
Nice.
So given some of the stuff that we talked about on the back end regarding the secret and stuff, I think that's kind of fitting. Which at some point we need to circle around. And since I took the hermit background, I'm supposed to have this great, enlightenment or
Oh, yeah.
secret discovery or whatever. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like I gained it through meditation. It may have come through like, whatever, like if we just got level, or if we just, before we started adventuring, if I just attained the 3rd level and actually became a Kinsai, it might have been the time before my Sifu, Silken Sky sent me into the world to get more worldly knowledge and exposure and stuff. She may have told me this great secret and was like, you need to, here it is, right? Here's this secret, and what you do with it is now up to you, kind of thing.
Perfect. I like it. Yeah, and we'll go over a lot of the more specific details of characters, like secrets and things like that are kind of more personal whenever we get a little closer to playing. It's definitely things that I want to handle with you guys one-on-one in most instances. Okay.
Speaking of which, are we starting already out as a party, or will session 1 be like, and I'm okay with like, hey, you guys meet in the tea house kind of thing. I have no qualms with that kind of stuff. I just want to know, like, because we're creating bonds, and like me and Scott's character, we already have a bond. So I can see, even if we're meeting for the first time, you at least have several characters that know each other. So you may have like a group of 3 and then a group of 2. And so it's still easier to conjoin, even if it's our first meeting. I'm just wondering what your plan was on that.
The plan is that you guys are not necessarily already partied together. Some of you may know each other. You may be together by circumstance. It may not be that you did it by design, that you came to this place together. But you will definitely have that you're quickly thrown together for reasons that we'll get into, obviously, whenever the game actually gets here. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of up to you guys. I'm going to leave it up to you as to how or why you came to this specific place. So if it makes sense for you and the person that you have a connection with to both decide to have traveled there together on purpose, perfectly cool. Not a problem at all.
I understand that Wudang Mountain would technically be more of an institution, but would they hire out their, like, so that way, I know a lot of monks end up doing work outside of the monastery, so that way they still have a connection to the people. Shaolin monks do it. And would they be, think of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like that was Wudang Mountain, but they were hired out as bodyguards and stuff like that. Could Alan and I be there for like a reason like that? Maybe we're also here to protect her for some good reason.
Yeah, possibly. I would definitely say that it's the kind of thing that, not quite a pilgrimage, but yeah, occasionally you're sent out to make sure that you understand, like you said, the way the world works, that you don't lose touch entirely, that you're actually out in nature other than just on the mountainside. But yeah, even if you wanted to work it out, and again, you're not limited to one connection with the PC. If you want to have more than that, you are absolutely capable of doing so. If all 5 of you share a connection with each other, I'm perfectly okay with that. That ball is entirely in y'all's court. I just want to know the specifics of the details, so that way I can maybe pull strings on it later. Maybe not.
Okay, so this area that we're going to start at, is this a place that I might be there involved in any sort of trade or seeking out some sort of story that a bard might be interested in that area?
Sure,
that might
it's
be
absolutely
even more
possible.
her style. Do I need to come up with something, or?
Well, like I said, I'm going to basically shotgun you guys at the beginning of the session and ask you, why are you here? So, forewarning, if you want to be thinking on that, you can. Yeah, it's kind of a remote mountain outpost that is kind of the furthest north that the Tsitian Empire covers, if you will. So I would definitely say that there could be good reasons why a bard would be there.
All right. And if Dave's character happens to be my bodyguard, then there'd be a good reason for him to be there.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because my parents, I'd already figured my parents weren't too excited about me running off adventuring and and getting in trouble. So I could see them easily wanting to hire someone to kind of keep an eye on their daughter.
I would say that makes sense.
It's just a little scatterbrained anyway.
Cool. Yeah, was there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on?
Shiny
Any questions?
butterflies.
I would just say, like, for my character, I shared some common knowledge in the chat or the Facebook chat about just some common knowledge things about what everybody would know about my character. The only thing I would say is that, Scott, your character, and it's not like a huge big secret, but outside of the party, you would know specifically that my character as a baby was found in the mountains, and that's how I grew up in Wudang, as far as came up through that way. So I don't know how you came to to the mountain, like if you were
I think you just stole my story is what just happened.
You were actually two babies kicking
Yeah.
Wuja ass in the bamboo forest surrounding Wudang Mountain.
We're fighting over scraps.
There you go. Then the monks discovered you and saw your raw talent. Oh.
It was an omen. We're destined for great things.
Yeah, see, Scott's character, his people were being enslaved, so his mom took him, put him in a little reed basket, floated him down the river, and what story are we talking?
Uphill at that point. Wudan's up in the mountains.
There is one river that does flow up north.
Put me on the back of a yak and smacked its butt.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking more maybe, which is kind of weird because just want to make sure. Dave ended up hitting on one of my original thoughts, which was kind of that shamed family. They were destroyed, wiped out by another like competing family or something like that. And then I was like, well, there's that, or I was like, could always do like the whole orphan thing. Just found out in the woods and the monks took you. It's Alan. So I'm starting from scratch here.
Yeah, I think the only other trope that we haven't touched on yet is the blind character. So
now that's
unless there's
too
blind
cliche.
orphans.
I was close. I was like,
I was gonna make him deaf. You got to be able to see.
Yeah. Well, twins, one blind, one deaf, but they were switched at birth, the left twin with the right twin.
Yeah, and I will tell you guys, I am not above tropes. Absolutely, positively not. So, if you want to go for things that you have seen in kung fu movies and things like that, don't be afraid. Like, there's a healthy amount of cheese that comes along with this kind of a genre. So,
strangely though, I want to go for something you wouldn't see in a kung fu movie, but that's what I do.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
I like to do something different.
An Asian guy in a yellow like full length Speedo suit. That's unheard of in like in a kung fu movie, right?
That'd be a little weird.
It's Bruce Lee.
I've even seen some of those. Of course, cat people probably aren't found in normal kung fu movies.
It's it's kind of hard to find videos with cat people in them that aren't
Horrible.
from a very specific genre. That's kind of in a deep hole of the internet.
I don't want anything to do with that.
Ever since I'd established a cat race in my world, trying to find art for them is always a very interesting process.
Oh, I didn't even look. I asked my daughter, who does a fantastic job drawing cats, and she made me that piece of art.
That is the safe route.
And I love it. It's beautiful. That was for a monk, but it'll work for anything.
Yeah, it's a very awesome drawing. I think it's fantastic. And it works really well for the character that you've been building as well.
Well, I had that in mind when I was building the character too, that it would want to fit together.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I use a lot of pictures in my games. For those of you who have not played with me, it's just the way that my brain tends to put things together. So I usually have a lot of visual aids.
But once again, let me know when you want my address.
Right. So yeah, touching on that, magic items are pretty commonplace. I like playing with them. They aren't the kinds of things where you're going to be finding a +1 Vorpal sword or a flame tongue or, you know, a bag of holding, every other session. Nor will you be finding Excaliburs left and right. I like to give out magical items that are kind of utilitarian, that kind of serve a purpose, or that have a couple of different things that they can do that are, at the surface at least, mundane, but that can sometimes lead to interesting, ingenious, outside-the-box thinking.
So kind of like Eberron.
I have never played Eberron. I know
Oh,
a little
okay.
bit about it, but not enough to be familiar with it that much.
Very similar in the fact that utilitarian magic is very prevalent, but high-level magic is not easily obtained.
Yeah, I come from playing first edition, and at least the way that we played first edition, by the time that you were thinking of retiring a character, you had every slot filled with a magical item. You had a magical cloak, you had a magical helmet, you had a magic boots, you had magic gloves, on and on and on and on. So that's kind of the way that my brain kind of goes back to. It's kind of what classic D&D is for me. So I kind of strive for a happy medium between that and kind of the way 5th edition typically does, like the magic economy. So don't be surprised if you see some stuff drop.
I just imagine like Kung Fu Panda being like, "This is Master Rhino's armor, and this is like the sword of 10,000 warriors."
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question for all you Kung Fu people that know stuff. I've got this cat character. Is there any attack that would be appropriate with her claws that would fit into some style, I don't know, or something? And is there any way also to reskin the rapier, which is what I would like to use? What would that be in like Kung Fu terms?
You're going with snake, correct?
Yes.
Okay. At least this is coming from my understanding with my wushu, my Shaolin background. Is snake is all about, you see, and Alan was doing it. You have your snake head here, and the other one is down underneath to protect the rest of the body. As you block and you fan out and you block, this strike, it's all about using the block or a punch to purposely miss, but it's going to hide this attack coming from underneath it and up and out. So it's a lot of sly, quick snap attacks that are hidden by the actions that they're doing at the time. Even if it's an elbow, you'll see a hand come in from underneath the armpit, and it's actually aiming up into their armpit to get this socket right in here.
Okay.
To try to disable the arm, or hitting inside of the elbow here. A quick little snap inside there can cause a tendon in your arm to like nullify, and it almost makes your whole arm go numb, so you can't even make a fist.
Could I reskin maybe daggers into claws to make attacks of that sort? Like where I would say it's a claw, but really it would normally be done with something like a dagger. What do you guys think?
Well, you're cat folk, so you should have claws anyways.
Right. But I'm just trying to think, how do I use them as part of an attack? Because I think that would be cool.
But you were talking about going with a rapier, right?
Yeah.
In Shaolin, that would probably be more of like a broadsword, and that would actually work with your snake because the broadswords are meant to flex and bend. So you can slap it flat edge on a corner of a wall, and it will snap around and still cut. So it's flexible, almost like a snake. And it's actually when they stab forward, they twist the wrist, so the whole blade whips. So it's not just doing a slashing action; it's actually like carving an S as it tears through the skin.
Okay, because with a broadsword in regular D&D is not a finesse weapon. It's
it's not the kind of broadsword that you're probably used to thinking about.
Okay. Yeah.
The way that I've been doing it here at home is just a rapier is basically more of the Chinese style sword. Well, it's very thin metal. It's double edged, whereas opposed to the katana single edged, and it is very malleable, very bendy, very fast, and it's used almost exclusively in jabbing, lunging, kind of things of that nature. There's not a whole lot of overhand chopping maneuvers that I've seen. But to touch on things like specific moves and things of that nature, as far as being a cat, yes, you can you have claws. So your claws would essentially do a D4 if you choose to use them in place of a weapon. But if you're talking about Kung Fu, as far as the things that you can do with that, the things you can purchase, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the crane stunt sheet here, just to kind of illustrate how this is going to work. So you can see here, hopefully you guys can actually see that. That there's, okay, good. So there's the moves listed out 1 through 7, the first of which is a 1+. The first thing to point out is that the 1+ is the only one that can be purchased in multiples at the same time. So you could spend a pair of 6s and buy 6 spearing beaks if you wished. But you could not spend 2 Swift Wings block stick. So each one of these things has a particular mechanical function. A spearing beak is basically your single attack. It's, in Crane's case, it's kind of a pointed hand strike, almost like simulating the head and beak, exactly like Alan's doing, of a crane. And the point is that you guys are able to kind of flavor these how you wish, as well as your traditional attacks with weapons and otherwise, to kind of fit the style that you may be using. But a spearing beak basically does 1 point of piercing damage. And it's just kind of one of those things where you might be able to get in there and throw an extra one just to get an extra point of damage in. Or you go completely nuts and just spend all 6 points and just sit there and rat-a-tat-tat on them. The 1 point is called One with the Flock. And for the next 1 minute, you can make a single jump equal to your movement speed. So, that's kind of the Kung Fu fly, if you will. You kind of leap through the air and sail an insane distance that would be impossible to do without wires. And that's in addition to your normal move. So you can kind of, if you've got a leftover point when you purchase one of the other stunts or what have you, you can kind of queue that one up and hold on to it, kind of like Bardic Inspiration. And then whenever a moment comes up where you're like, oh, now I need to cover a big distance, here we go. The second one, the 2 point, is called the Graceful Fisherman. It's kind of a flying jump kick that you can make with reach, which is up to 10 feet. And it does a D4 points of piercing damage if you do hit with it. And 3, which is the last one that students can access, is Swift Wings block stick. You choose a target, and until the end of your next turn, all of that target's attacks against you have disadvantage. So it's very much kind of a defensive, putting your hands out in front of you and keeping them from getting to you. If you are a Sensei, then you have access to 4 through 6 in addition. 4 is the Stand of Patience, and that's basically the crane kick from Karate Kid. This little homage thrown in there. You ready a kick until any one target moves into engagement with you. It does not use your reaction. A swift upward kick dealing 1d6 points of bludgeoning damage. Do you add any modifiers to the damage on these? If you are a Sensei. If you are a student, they are the flat die roll, but you do get a modifier to your attack. You get one of your style's abilities added to your attack rolls with your Kung Fu. So for Crane, if your dexterity were higher, then you would be adding those to your attacks, and then they would be the flat damage. But once you became master, you could decide whether you wanted to add your your dexterity or your wisdom modifier to the attack, and then you would add the other to the damage. And you can choose basically per round how you want to divide that up.
Are these attacks in addition or in lieu of? Is this just in place of your actions? Or whatever
No,
your
like I
actions can
said,
do?
your normal turn in D&D has your action, your bonus action, your move, and then a reaction during the course of the round. Your turn now will also have a kung fu action that is entirely separate. And it will function off of these stunts here if you have pairs of dice from your D6 pool.
That's awesome because that will simulate like those really quick, like blurring actions of.
Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah, it's worked out rather well at home. It definitely does tend to lengthen people's turns by a little bit, and can change the amount of damage output that you guys have as a party. But I think I have managed to find the sweet spot as far as what to put up against the party to compensate for that, and I think it works pretty well. And even though it does tend to take people a little longer on their turns, usually the flavor that I'm able to extract from a player because of this tends to, according to several of the people that help playtest it and have been playing in the game at least, it makes it feel much more wuxia because they have this constantly in their mind of, oh, that's right, I need to follow up my sword swing with a kick, or oh, I've got my hands out in front of me because I've got Swift Wings block stick. So since I'm already in that position, this is going to flavor my attack this way. So it seems to have been worth it, in my opinion.
How do you feel about using some of these as a reactionary?
Some of them are set to where they can be.
Okay.
It kind of depends on the style and the cost and things of that nature. So obviously with D6s as your the die type that is forming your Kung Fu pool, it's impossible to get 7s. Unless, of course, you are a master, which is one step above a sensei. The only way that you can become a master is to not only reach the appropriate level, which would be 8th for most classes, but also you have to establish a school. So you actually have to find a place, you have to pay to build one or renovate one or take one over, and then you actually have to populate it. At that point, you no longer have to have a student that adventures with you. They could even be the one who stays behind and becomes, the sensei of your school, if you wish. But because masters are able to roll their dice upwards, you could theoretically get a 7. And for the 7s are usually pretty special, powerful maneuvers. In the case of the crane style, this one is called Heaven's Flight. A buffet of wind centered on you that functions as a thunderwave spell, except the creatures that fail also fall prone. In addition, you also become airborne and remain hovering 10 feet above the ground until the end of your next turn. So you kind of take a temporary flight, if you will. So yeah, each one of the styles has a chart like this. Admittedly, not all of them are finished. It does take a little bit of work kind of getting them to feel right and hopefully be somewhat balanced. I think I have 10 or 11 of them done, maybe a dozen out of the clans. So any of the ones that you guys have chosen as your particular style, I will absolutely make sure it gets finished before we actually start the game. So yeah, hopefully it works out as well as it has here at home. Online play kind of goes a little different. Most of my games here at home focus on combat a bit more. Online play is always a little less combat centric. So kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. Ram does have a write-up. Those are the two that I did first because those were the two clans that they had to be from.
I know Carol is talking about looking for something competent to a rapier. would a Tai Chi straight sword perhaps supplement as a rapier? It is very finessey, like a rapier would have to be. Knowing not only drunken straight sword, but also like Tai Chi straight sword, long fist straight sword. It is very much not about power but finesse.
Yeah, I could agree to that. Like, I definitely don't know all of the nuances between different sword types, but I have seen and learned a little bit in my studies for the game, and essentially, I opted to try to keep things as simple as possible because I've been roped into way too many conversations about, well, the katana is not really this, it should be that, and it ends up being this big, huge, well, again, language warning. It's a big clusterfuck.
You're the DM, dude. You can say no if you want.
No.
I'm just saying from my experience, this is how I would describe this weapon from knowing people who use it. I myself, I don't, but I know people that use it and how they explained it to me and how the weapon functions within a fight. Because using a spear, I have to know how to fend off the straight sword, and knowing full well that they're going to try to guide my spear out of the way so that they can come in underneath, try to get in here into the ribs, the soft spots, because that weapon isn't really built for power. It's more like stick and move out of the way. You know, death by 1,000 stabs if possible.
So that would be the dex fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sword I always kind of pictured in my head as being kind of the equivalent of the rapier in this setting is the one from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Green Destiny.
That's like a Tai Chi straight sword.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love that. 100%. I mean, I won't go with the fancy green one, but having actually watched that movie this week, that would be great. That would go great with the dex fighter, obviously. You know,
yeah,
I mean, all I want to do is just flavor it so that it fits properly or reasonably well, you know.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know what they'd use.
I think you're doing just fine, Carol.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing we agreed on, Jeremy, because I was my character obviously is going the Tai Chi route, or Crane. Crane is very similar to Tai Chi. It's very fluid and it's an inner style more than an outer style. So I think we agreed that the rapier is the Xi'an or the Tai Chi straight sword, wherever you want to call it, is the best example of that. Whereas katana most likely is equivalent to a longsword, because you can use it one-handed, or if you were to double up, you get that versatile strike.
Exactly.
Right. And I think the best way to do weapons is just you don't have to make up anything as far as make up a new weapon. Just find one very close. Similarly, like, hey, what's a Tetsubo? You can say it's a great club.
Yep. That's exactly the way I've been doing it.
Something to that effect.
It's so much easier to keep the intended balance of the game that way. It's already built in. You're just calling things by a different name. And you know, in a few cases, there's special things to consider. You do a nunchuck like a club, but maybe it has an advantage to ignore the armor class given to you by shields or something like that because of the way that it behaves as a weapon. But that's all things that I think can be handled on a case by case basis.
So we need to have a conversation about my dragon head hook swords beyond the reach aspect of it.
Well, I think we did. Yeah, I think the reach is probably a good compromise. You can have the two different attacks, and then you can combine them and have reach. I think that's a pretty handy thing to be able to call upon if you need to.
I've seen it done different ways in games, and I asked you about it, and you're like, no, you just, instead of taking two shots, you take one shot with it reach hooked together with that long swing. I was like, that makes far too much sense.
It's simple, it's clean, it's there's no reason to have a long drawn out argument about it. It makes a quick decision, and it's something that for a mundane weapon feels like you're getting a little extra out of it. You're squeezing a little extra juice just because of the design of the weapon in particular, without going into the territory of possibly breaking anything.
Oh, I'm going to put you through your test. I know how exactly those weapons work, and it's all about trapping other weapons and breaking them and hooking and directing. So I'm going to get your mind working for you.
Sounds good. Everything can come down to a die roll. That's the great thing about being a DM.
Yeah, I mean,
and then we just get to describe them in cool ways.
Exactly. That's all on you guys.
Like you could easily say like the rope dart is just use the whip and just make it piercing, right? Because it has
absolutely.
Or if you wanted to use the comma, but you wanted to have the weighted chain, which there's a specific name for that, and it escapes me right now. But you could simply do a sickle and just give it the same reach as like a whip. You know, just something as simple as that.
I think I had a monster that they had to face. Well, not a monster, an opponent. But yeah, the name of it's lost on me right now too. But yeah, it's got the chain that connects them, and they could attack with both.
Yeah, it has a weighted end. I can't remember the name of it either. Japanese weapons and styles I'm not as familiar with. The Shaolin I got down.
It's a Kasarigama.
That's it. Yep.
Coming in from left field.
So
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of circle this into Jeff because he's been really either he's been really patient or he's just absorbing. But you know, it is a fantasy game, so I want to kind of address like what do people know about magic, about spirits, about Oni, about hungry ghosts? Like, is that a thing? Is it like lore and legend and myth, or is it like everyday like, hey, don't go out at night because you could come across an Oni or a hungry ghost or Kinsei or whatever. So
damn chupacabras are eating my goats again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of going to that a little bit too. Of like, where kind of does magic sit in this setting? Is it something that you would see on the street? Is it something that's like a rare and spooky occurrence? Like as far as being a sorcerer, how does that kind of fit into the world at large?
So this is kind of one of the places where it takes more of a step back towards traditional D&D, where it's not as taboo or as witchcrafty as magic a lot of times is in a lot of the mythology that I've read coming out of Asia. That kind of magic certainly is present, but it's not the common interpretation of magic. There is also divine magic, healing magic and things of that nature. And, what is a cleric and what is a monk is a whole different conversation. It's kind of a confusing line. But as far as like arcane casters, it's, a lot of mages become chancellors to rulers because of their enhanced mental attributes. They're usually smarter, they're usually wiser, better studied, worldly. So they end up becoming advisors a lot. So they very much have a place in society. And as far as fantastical elements, just like any other D&D world, they are very prevalent and they are very understood. Not everybody may have seen an Oni or dragon or what have you, but they usually have seen the horn of an Oni, or at least what they were told was the horn of an Oni being sold. They may have seen a dragon flying in the sky off in the distance.
That was a ram horn.
It's entirely possible. It's rhino horn. You powder it. It's good for, constitution checks. So it's definitely a part of the setting. And it's truthfully, that's probably been one of the funnest parts of running this setting is kind of finding that constant balance between making it decidedly Asian and decidedly still Dungeons and Dragons. And one of the ways that I've tried to do that is with monsters and creatures and things. So from the mythology that I've read, Oni is kind of a catch-all. It's kind of anything evil, any malaligned spirit kind of tends to warp and corrupt things and becomes Oni. Well, in this setting, Oni are kind of a mix between ogres and trolls, with kind of demonic lineage. So they're just nasty, big, brutish customers. But yeah, it would definitely be if you're going out in the wilds, you don't go by yourself, because there's all kinds of things that will try to trick you and or eat you. So it's definitely something that people are aware of.
And it really is. It's not like a big game breaker or game changer or anything like that. Are you using the Chinese elements or the Japanese elements? And really, the only difference is one has metal and one uses void. So just which one would you say that the setting is leaning towards as far as elemental?
As far as the elemental stuff, I stuck with the D&D elements. So you got the 4 basics and then the different kinds of damage types and things of that nature. As far as philosophically, I hadn't really done a whole lot with it, so it could be either or. I would probably say that the 4 natural elements are probably more prominent than anything else, just because they are in the D&D rules.
Yeah, I mean, just and the only reason I was asking because I was just doing something for fun. So basically, what I did is I rolled a d12, which gave me my birth zodiac, which I actually got dragon, and then I rolled a d10, which is basically just split it up into the 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that kind of thing. And basically, my birth sign is a fire dragon, is what I got. So,
nice.
And if you want to use that to flavor something, whatever, go for it. That's just like character flavor stuff.
Sure, absolutely. I love that kind of stuff.
It doesn't have to be anything, like I said, mechanically or anything like that. But I like just little nuanced stuff like that. And then the other thing I use it for is I just kind of, I read the sign and I read the element. And I'm like, okay, how can this flavor the personality of my character? Being fire, is he very energetic? Is he very outspoken? That kind of stuff. As a dragon, does he reflect on inner wisdom? Is he lucky? Or just those kinds of things where I just try to bring that into the character outside of just the normal D&D personality flaws and bonds and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm totally cool with that kind of stuff. Again, I hadn't thought of it as being a part of the world really overly much. Like I said, I've used the 4 elements in a couple of places, but I hadn't really made a choice one way or the other as far as the 5 elements goes. So, whatever you want to do, man, is perfectly fine with me. Again, any place where I feel that you guys are stepping too far outside of what I have established as the setting, I'll just kind of just nudge you back into the corral
with a bamboo stick.
With a bamboo stick.
You beat me to it. I was going to be like, and we'll ignore you.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And they're raping and pillaging this village. What are you going to do? We brought marshmallows.
Yep.
No, you can't be alone. We're not going to let them rape and pillage. Or with you was doing the raping and pillaging. I better get this straight first.
You never know sometimes, man.
But this group could go either way.
So I pasted in the chat what I kind of see as probably what I would be carrying. A long sword would be the katana. Sword would be the wakizashi. Bow would be the yumi. And then the halberd would be the naginata. Does that about fall in line with what you would think for? And then I guess that's the next question, which was, coin and I guess level for what we're going to. But I don't want to step on if we're still talking about magic, because Jeff's been very nice and quiet, letting us chat.
No, as far as the weapon designations, yeah, that's exactly the kinds of exchanges that I have been doing. So that's on par with the way I've been doing things so far. Yeah, were there any other questions that you had, Jeff, about magic and its place in the world, how to handle things of that nature? Uh-oh.
He says no.
He's like, "Fuck it, I'm out of here."
He completely just left the group.
Yeah, he didn't like your answers at all. All this talking about him behind his back.
Dave's an asshole.
Fuck you and your naginata. I'm out. So yeah, no, just
naginata.
Naginata.
What about the lamellar, the armor? What would you designate that as?
As far as armor goes, I haven't actually bothered to really do a whole lot of renaming.
Okay.
There's so few types of armor listed in the book. it's basically just, you know, if you're wearing full plate because you have found it or could afford it, then you have the most kick-ass, heaviest samurai armor that you can think of.
I don't think that we're going to be affording that, but maybe a
You never know,
Lamar
man.
like Yori, just the chest piece, right?
Yeah, so if it's
Might be
just
a
a chest piece,
breastplate.
I would say it's probably breastplate.
Yeah, I would say the Lamar armor is probably breastplate. If you go like the full samurai armor, the full like the headgear and everything else like that, that would probably, I don't know if it would necessarily be full plate, just because it wasn't really metal. It was still kind of just interlocking lacquered bamboo with leather and padding. So that may actually be more half plate than full plate. But again, it's a fantasy setting. So if you wanted to say it was a full on suit of silver samurai armor, then go for it, right? So I mean, that would be up to Jeremy. But like I said, I mean, I think as long as you can work with Jeremy and say, hey, I feel like this would be this. Do you agree? Do you want to make a change to that? I think we can all come to an agreement on it.
Yeah, essentially, like I've tried to keep it as close to the core as I can, so that way, you know, you don't lose things from your class. Like, oh well, normally I'd be a fighter who could get, you know, a +8 armor class, but because it's, you know, technically not full plate, then I don't know if I. But it's just like, screw it. Just if you want full plate as a fighter, take full plate and then just reflavor it into the setting. You know, just put a different coat of paint on it.
So my leather is just going to be reskinned into my fur.
No, it will still be leather, hun.
Probably still be leather.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
Maybe you've just spent a lot of time in the sun.
She's wearing clothing over it. I mean, you know. I'm not having some naked cat person. No, ain't happening.
Fair enough.
And I know you and I spoke of this a little bit on there. Maybe just cover it for these other gentlemen. Exactly how much, at least cover like their styles with them, maybe a little bit of what you expect the style to do. Having your background and whatnot, like I can explain Snake, but that doesn't mean that that's Snake in your world. Just like my Mantis isn't necessarily Mantis in your world. I can only go off of what I know.
Exactly. And yeah, for the most part, where I could find real world analogs, I tried to emulate at least what I felt was kind of the focus. Like you said, you know, Mantis is about kind of grasping pressure points and, you know, doing a lot of very quick, precise strikes. So I tried to kind of capture that in the stunts that represent the Mantis style. But obviously, there's not really a unicorn style, for example, though there is a unicorn clan. There's not really a rat style. But there are things that I've kind of gathered across not only the real world martial arts that had analogs, but also the tropey things that I could find that I felt had a home. Or, for example, Monkey pulls a lot from the drunken boxing style, a lot from Drunken Monkey style, a lot of the Jackie Chan style moves that I've seen him do in his movies and things of that nature.
And Jeremy, if you don't have it in Monkey style, you need to add in Monkey Grabs the Peach.
Yes, there is actually one called, I think I called it Poaching Eggs. Because I read that and I laughed about it for 10 minutes.
For the unicorn style, look up horse style. There is a horse style.
Mm-hmm. That is something else that I wanted to go across or go over. Is in this setting, horses are incredibly rare. If somebody actually had a horse, it would only be the very upper echelon of society, and most of them probably would not be ridden. If anything, maybe just in a yard, a courtyard kind of thing. The horses in this setting are umaji, and they're large birds. I didn't realize it at the time because I never played these games, but they're chocobos, essentially, just a little less cartoony. They're kind of like they call it a blade beak, something like that, I think. In one of the
Axe beak?
later Axe beak, that's it.
Yeah,
They're in-
that's what I use for the terror birds and the savage
Perfect.
land setting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I had done a stupid doodle years ago, and I liked it enough that I didn't want to throw it away. And I was like, I'm going to keep that and put it in my D&D world somewhere. And then at some point I was like, I'll put it in the Asian place. Like, I didn't have any intention of ever really necessarily visiting this place in specifics. But one of my players, as it turns out, is a very big aficionado of Japanese culture. And he is very patient with us playing in our mostly European-centric games. So I decided to run this game for him. But yeah, so the chocobo, riding birds. There are the same kinds of iterations of horses as there are umaji. So, you can get a war umaji, you can get a riding umaji, you can get a draft umaji. You can get the equivalent of a mule, effectively. Again, it's just kind of reskinning what's already there without reinventing the wheel. Cool. Jeff, did you have any more questions about magic and or how it fits in the world?
Yeah, I had one quick question. I know you mentioned
Sure.
with the dragon style that they like to weave magic into that. I just don't know exactly what you had in mind for that as far as mechanically how that works. Knowing that I will have magic and use that style, if it's like a mechanical thing or if it's just a different flavoring.
Yeah, for the most part, it's kind of just more of a flavor thing. Like the dragon, it's kind of more of a dragon mentality, where magic is never has to be separated from martial combat, in their opinion. And as far as their kung fu style goes, I'm trying to remember if it's one that I've finished or not, because the clan is non-existent. No, it is one.
So
that
you're
I
saying
have.
he could cast in combat then? Maybe get an advantage on constitution checks for concentration, or
Well, the styles, aside from the stunts that you have, what clan that you come from doesn't really grant you anything mechanically. So if he picked a class or feats or what have you that allowed him to cast in combat, then he would absolutely, but not necessarily any more so than someone else. But if you take a look here at Dragon Style, it's got some. The setup is kind of similar, but the stunts are actually pretty different from Crane Style. So, for example, their basic attack is Tail of the Worm. It still kind of functions the same way, but it's a fast kick instead of a hand strike, and it does bludgeoning instead of piercing. And they have Leap of the Cloudwalkers. For the remainder of your turn, your speed increases by 5 foot, and your jumping distance is doubled. You get scales of battle, rather. Using either a bonus action or a reaction, you can gain a +2 to your AC against the next attack made against you. So there's just different ways that they function, and again, trying to, like Scott said, trying to pull upon the totem that they're based upon, or a real world martial arts, which most of them pull upon the totem of the animal, in not the mantra, but kind of the flavor of everything.
So I mean, I just have, for me personally, I love this. I think it's great. So my question to you is, like, how ham can we go in the game? Like, as far as like just like the whole like wuxia style stuff, like for instance, right? Say we want to describe like, oh, I take my Tai Chi sword and like with a flick, it flashes out, and then very quickly motion back, and like as I'm putting it back into the scabbard, and then I pause for a moment, and then when it clicks back in, that's when like the wood splits. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of description of how cinematic or how fantastical can we be with the wushu style stuff?
Well, and to tail end off that, Alan, to interject, or my question too was, in some cases I've almost watched them and it goes almost to a comical level, and maybe we should, there's almost to a point where you're like, wow, that is so far out of the realm of reality that I'm having even trouble looking at it in a fantasy way. So kind of like adding that
Yes.
on as a question. I think some
Yes.
nights will be funny maybe, but you know.
And that is absolutely a concern of mine that I've had from the very beginning. When I started watching, again, I was not an aficionado of any form before I started kind of immersing myself in the genre for planning for White Lotus Black Jade. I think I'd maybe seen 3 or 4 kung fu movies. I didn't really read up on any of their mythologies and things like that. I understood some key phrases, but I was not very versed at all. And so when I started watching a lot of movies, there's a definite razor's edge of awesome and goofy. And it is something that I try to stay very aware of whenever I'm running White Lotus Black Jade, and hopefully we'll be able to do as well here. And it's more the kind of, if you could describe it cinematically, and it feels mature is the wrong word. Okay, here's my defining factor. My defining factor, and I hate the fact that I'm going to alienate people with this, but personally, it's just a personal taste thing. I don't like anime. Most anime I've seen, I don't really care for. It's just a personal taste. It's a kind of preference thing. And to me, anime hits on a lot of things that take that a little too far. And that's one of the things that I typically have an issue with.
Yeah, I don't think we can be friends anymore, dude.
I know. I have people in my home group that are the same way. They adore it. And I've seen animes that were good. It's just, on the whole, the genre doesn't typically appeal to me, because I think that it pushes that needle a little too far into the bizarre, the gonzo, if you will.
We can still be friends, Jeremy. Hopefully, I haven't alienated Scott.
Again, not trying to draw lines in the sand.
For me, I was going to say, if you could, I think just from as soon as you said like you didn't like anime, I was already going towards, if you can keep it in the realm of Hong Kong cinema, Hong Kong wire work kind of stuff versus anime, then I think you're okay. Like if you can relate it to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? That's still kind of fantastical, where they're like scaling up walls and kind of like cloud walking over the bamboo and you know, walking across water, and they're kind of soaring across the sky. That's still fantasy, still fantastical. It's when you get into the anime stuff where you're like, oh, I see the pretty girl and I have a nosebleed that's like a fountain of blood. That kind of stuff you want to avoid, right?
Exactly.
Or, you know, but like how, to that same aspect, like how bloody do you want like Tarantino kind of blood? Like if Dave was to take his katana and slice open somebody, do we have like, you know, the Kool-Aid blood that's like pressurized? Or you just want like, oh, he like severs a limb and it's bloody, but it's not like, you know, pressurized.
Yeah, it's definitely not quite as Tarantino as, you know, blood sprays everywhere kind of thing. But it definitely is going to be a bloody affair, and I have no problems with gore or anything of that fashion. That part of it, I would like to keep a little more gritty realism. The stunts, the flying around, things like that, I am definitely much more willing and wanting, encouraging of things like you said, House of Flying Daggers, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where it's the beauty of combat is kind of illustrated through it, where it doesn't necessarily go into the comical. Again, like if you're playing a comical character, that's fine. Just make sure that you pick your moments correctly. You know, when you're fighting the big bad nasty guy and he's got so-and-so's sister under his blade, you're not going to come in and, you know, Shaolin soccer all over the place. You know, it gets a little, but I mean, all of you guys are players that have enough experience on your belt to know how to read a situation like that, I think, and respond appropriately. So, but yeah, I mean, if there's ever a question, just, you know, go for it. And if it's a little too far, I might go, well, you know, maybe his head doesn't explode like a pumpkin, but, you know, yes, his head does pop. But overall, I think we'll probably find a common style as we play, and it'll become apparent what fits and what doesn't. Touching on that, inspiration. I allow inspiration to stack up to 4. And you can earn it for all kinds of things. You can ask Jeff. Jeff has been a player in several of my games, as well as Dave. You can get it for even something as stupid as telling me a joke that makes me honestly belly laugh. I might give you inspiration for it. And you can likewise spend it for things other than just advantage on a roll. So if you wanted to flit across the tops of the bamboo trees in pursuit of someone, you can ask, can I spend a point of inspiration to just cinematically handle that? And I won't make you roll anything. Yep, just go for it. Yeah, it's kind of a thing that's a little bit of a departure. Another thing that's kind of a departure is not all combat will end in death. There will be a lot of, he's on his knees at your mercy. What do you choose to do? Things of that nature.
5-finger death punch. Duh. No, I hate to bounce around, but I just thought of it. Where in the era, what era are we in as far as, so we talked about magic and stuff. Is there early gunpowder? Not necessarily guns, but the Chinese did have fireworks and they did have cannons. Is that around, or is there no gunpowder, alchemical fire, or whatever you want to call it, available?
Yes, there is alchemist fire, as per the book, and then there's also something in my world that is called dwarven rock powder, which is black powder, but it is incredibly rudimentary and usually unstable. Most people don't keep it around because typically the dwarves are really the only ones that know how to properly handle it without it blowing up in their face. The Tsitians have started to kind of learn the secret of it a little bit, but at this point it's really just kind of fireworks is really the only thing that they've really messed around with. So it's used as a toy in their minds, albeit a dangerous toy, but a toy all the same. But that's not to say that you may not see it in other places. Dwarves are kind of known to have it around, particularly in this area. But definitely not guns.
Right. Okay, perfect. Now that you mentioned dwarves, is Carol the only one that's not human? The rest of us are human? Is that right? Jeff?
I'm toying with the idea of going with half-elf instead of human, but I haven't settled yet. But otherwise, so far as written, I'm human.
I'm going elf, moon elf in all technicality. Is that categorized like your high elf and yours?
Yeah, if the high elf stats work for you, that's perfectly fine. In my homebrew world, each of the races has like 6 different breakdowns, sub races, and I haven't converted those from 3rd edition to 5th edition yet. So if you want me to work out what that would be, then I can for you. But if you're happy with the high elf stats, then
I'd rather use whatever your moon elves are. Like it doesn't matter to me, even if it gives me a deficit in what stats I need for Mantis, I'll still use it. Like that's just the character.
Cool. Yeah, I will work on putting together the mechanics for that, the crunch for that, and see, and I'll get it to you and see what you think.
All right.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, all the fantasy races are represented here. They all are kind of colored towards being Asian, and they have more Asian features, and they tend to be darker hair, things of that nature. And they've even kind of adapted a lot of the style of clothes, music, cultural aspects kind of into their culture. So the elves would probably still wear kimono style clothing, made of fine silks and things of that nature. The dwarves would carry probably more things of the nature of tetsubos and naginatas as opposed to axes. So there's kind of like I said, that kind of balance between what is Dungeons and Dragons and what is Asian is kind of a constant through thread for the setting. Yeah, Carol says I can almost picture an Asian dwarf. I've actually found some pretty cool pictures that I was really happy with. Dwarves with top knots and samurai armor that looks like it's made of stone and cool stuff like that. Was there any other questions? Kung Fu, magic, characters. We didn't do level. You guys are going to start at 3rd level. I went ahead and settled on that. And that way you guys have your archetypes under your belt. You have some experience and adventure under your belts already. You guys should have plenty of features to kind of play around with and options at your disposal during combat. As far as starting gear, go ahead and do your starting equipment as per the book. And then in addition, you can have 200 gold to spend on various things. We're going to hold off on letting you guys have any magic items at the beginning, just because I'd like to be the one who puts those in y'all's hands. Part of it is a greedy DM thing. I like giving my players magic items. It's a great pleasure of mine. So
Yeah, we'll let you do that.
good.
That's all right with me. Yeah. So we would purchase 200 golds worth of stuff that we would have on us at the beginning of the game. That's what you're saying, if we wanted to.
Correct.
Do you
we'd have a big
happen
money
to
bank.
Sorry, go ahead.
do you happen to have a like an exotic weapons list? If not, I know I have one somewhere embedded somewhere in one of my files.
I don't. I know the DMG has a table listing where it just kind of calls the weapons by different names, but I don't have any kind of expanded weapons.
I'll try to look at it because it has a lot of like the Asian actual theme stuff. I don't think it's actual Wizard of the Coast, but it's fairly accurate and like well made, and it kind of give everybody at least an idea because it has like shurikens in there and darts and stuff like that.
Okay,
I'll
yeah,
have to take a look for that.
Take a look at it. So was somebody up? Oh, Jeff is missing. He can get some of this information later on if he needs to.
So, Jeremy, we had discussed. So, since I do have an herbalism kit, and I am proficient in it, we had discussed that since we are starting at level 3, that I would be able to make either a health potion or an antitoxin, 2 per level. So I was thinking, if I go with 1, 2, 3, maybe just 3 healing potions and 3 antitoxins.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah, especially given the background that you've taken, where you're from a remote, isolated temple shrine kind of thing. It's definitely the kind of thing where they have to make a lot of their own supplies in house. So it's definitely something that I would say easily you could have picked up on how to do.
Yeah, I also went ahead and took the medic feat, which doubles my proficiency in medicine. And during our short rest, basically the feat allows me to make a DC medicine roll. And if I per creature I'm medicing, I think it's up to like 6 people or 6 creatures or whatever you want to call it. And if I make that DC, which I think is like a 15, basically they get 1 max hit die without spinning the hit die.
Yeah.
So if like their hit die is a D6, then they get the full D6 without having to roll it. But
Nice.
let's say, but it's only 1 die. So even if they were to say spin 2 die on that rest, they only max 1 die. So it's not not all of their dice or whatever. But
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
very fitting.
focusing on the aspect of the healing part.
It's never bad to have a healer in the group.
I imagine it more like Chinese herbalism, medicine kind of stuff, you know?
Sure. Fifth edition
Nobody
did a
can
really
always
good job
blame
of
somebody.
exactly. Fifth edition did a really good job of kind of spreading healing, whatever you want to call it, hit point regain, kind of amongst the classes without leaving it kind of shouldered on the cleric. It kind of frees the cleric up to do other things with their turn more frequently.
And then just so you guys know, I did end up taking the calligraphy supplies. So if we ever, you know, need to write a letter or whatever, definitely could do that. And you know, however you want to do that, Jeremy. Like, I know, like it says in there, like basically, when you're proficient with a tool, basically you just choose whatever attribute you want to do, and then you roll it. So I don't know, like oh, if you want to make it look very pretty, maybe use Dex. If you wanted it to be like a poem, maybe you use Charisma with the proficiency. But I don't think all the time that it would necessarily be my words. Say if Carol's character didn't have calligraphy, she wasn't proficient in that, but we wanted to draft some sort of letter or poem or something like that that would gain us access somewhere. Maybe that would be something, you know, I could write it, but she would supply the word. So maybe it's a dual role or something.
Right. You could work together.
Yeah, it's the kind of situation where like most characters probably know how to write and can do so, but you probably have formal training. So you understand how to draft a persuasive essay, if you will, or you know how to head something properly if you're sending it to a member of the state government, you know, or you know how to address people, you know, formally, things of that nature, as well as you know your handwriting is much better, and you can probably do it much quicker, you know, for longer periods of time, things of that nature. And as far as like handling the roles, yeah, doing it to where it's based on the circumstances is definitely the way that I like to handle that kind of thing. And I even actually take that a step further, and I like to do that with skills in general. So there are times where you could make an intimidation check where it's not going to be based on your charisma, you know, because you're trying to stand over the guy and be a scary mofo. Well, that's not charisma. You know, you're going to be doing it based on your strength. Or you know, you may be trying to perform an open locks roll or a sleight of hand roll, but you're trying to force the lock open instead of you know, doing it with deftness. So you'd use strength instead of dexterity, things of that nature. So there will be times where that kind of gets experimental, we'll call it. So, was there anything else that you guys felt like we needed to cover?
I'm pretty all set on my side. If anybody needs any questions answered, I can help on the Shaolin side for the most part, at least when it comes to the styles and like things, appropriate attacks and what they're aiming to do, considered like compared to like tiger or crane, any of that. I can help you with that, and like your Tai Chi straight sword, what you're looking for that. It's very much like a rapier. It's more of a finesse weapon, not power. Other than that, I can only offer my services. I'm going to try to look up anybody who is interested. I'm trying to find a dragon form right now that I can send to Jeff, so that way he has one. And about the only good one I can find is from like 1980, but it's a World Wushu competition. So I think it was an old man who might accidentally, he might be from the original family that created it. The guy was so old.
Yeah, and any kind of questions and things like that, I mean, you guys know how to get a hold of me, and you know, I'm pretty much available no matter what time, unless I'm unconscious, and then it can wait until I wake up. But yeah, I don't mind questions at all. I don't mind talking about it at length. I would rather you guys have a really firm kind of understanding of the reasons why something is the way that it is, why I might have made a certain call. and that you guys understand kind of what we're trying to accomplish with both the setting and the tone and all those kinds of things. So yeah, don't feel hesitant at all to ask any questions you might have. And there's definitely other things that we'll have to go over between now and session 1, I'm sure, as well as getting you guys more specific information about race or the style of kung fu that you decided to go with, things of that nature. So yeah, kind of last call for questions. If you guys have any you want to go over tonight.
When you say style of kung fu, that's the clan, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The way that you earn a style, typically, that you learn a style, is by being a part of that clan. They typically guard it pretty closely. It's not exactly a secret, but they don't just take in anybody and start teaching them their style. So yes, the two of them are typically linked. Cool.
All right, so starting plus 200 gold, we're 3rd level, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so we should work on those other tasks of linking each other.
Yep.
So
yeah, come up with your secrets, come up with your PC connections, NPC connections. Just talk with me about it. Like I said, as long as it's a degree or 2 removed from royalty, I really don't care kind of what you guys choose. You're able to kind of have carte blanche and come up with what you want.
Did we cover? I know Dave asked in the comments on the side, what does Ram style fall into? Did we?
As far as like the mantra goes,
compared to, I guess, reality, so that way maybe I can find something to
like what it's based on.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like grounded stances and things like that. Taekwondo, I guess, to some degree.
Taekwondo is a lot of kicking, and you don't have all too much of a grounded stance on that. Okay. Southern style wushu is mainly all grounded to the earth and a lot of fist work. Because they mainly practiced on boats because they were mainly fishermen, so they didn't have a lot of room to run around and jump around. Whereas the northern style, you get more jumps and kicks like that. So it's probably something more southern. I don't know if you said that it's strength based, correct?
Yeah, strength and con. It's kind of got a lot of headbutting, and again, I know that's kind of not a typical thing that you would see in reality. It's a lot more fantasy.
Alan, we were totally meant to like communicate highly on this one because I was just about to say Hungar. Sounds like Hungar.
I would say go with Hungar, which is the style. And this just comes to mind just because I'm running an Avatar game upcoming. And in Avatar, the Earthbenders use Hungar, which is very ground stance. It's very strong forward movements.
Yes.
Strong punches, strong kicks. While remaining, rooted to the ground. So that's probably a good style to reflect on as far as for inspiration. You don't have to. It's a fantasy game, so you don't have to stay true to the style itself, but you can look for that style for inspiration.
Yeah, it's a style that you can look up and equate yourself with, so that way you'll have ideas of how to flavor your actions to it. Like Hungar has a lot of like head flipping and stuff like that to it too, in order to cover distance, to just kind of seem watch a couple Hungar like form videos and you'll understand. They are all over the place, and it is very rooted to the ground and very much like I'm going to punch the person behind you through your belly button.
Yeah, that's very much how I kind of had envisioned Ram style. It's very much earth bending, like you said, where it's a lot of I think what they call horse stance, where it's real low, real wide, and other things that you guys have just mentioned just now. It's a lot of things like being able to not be able to knocked prone, like if you've purchased Root of the Mountain. Or you can even do things like Woolen Coat, where you gain immunity to cold effects for an hour. The Iron Hoof Kick, where you make a one-armed handstand and you deliver a kick with both feet to a target. Things like...
I don't know if Dave missed it. So, Dave, I mean, there's really not a whole lot to Ram style. It's smash, bleat, smash, bleat,
And eat anything, right?
Yep.
So you're just a big barbarian.
It's a very
I was
rough.
kind of thinking. You remember that
Style.
that first in Seven Samurai? You know those two guys that square off, and then the guy that all he's doing is just standing with the sword back, the older guy, and then the guy comes running at him like screaming. I was kind of thinking, you know, a lot of fighting, like very patient and watching, because not all the time, but I mean, especially in duels, was just a lot of patience and let them make the first move. But
Yes.
But
and then when they come in, I'm going to headbutt them.
and
Rams usually are the ones doing the charging, though.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Dave,
situationally.
Dave, I'm going to take this from Legend of the Five Rings RPG. So Ram sounds very similar to the Crab
Yes.
clan. So they wear a lot of heavy, as far as in the setting, you know, it's very Japanese samurai oriented. So they all wear Japanese armor. But if you look at the Crab clan, they wear very heavy armor. And most of them do utilize things like tetsubos, basically big great clubs, right? So even though they're samurai, they'll still have their daisho, their wakizashi and their katana, which is a symbol of their status as a samurai, of nobility, right? But just because they have that at their side, that's their social status, doesn't mean that they're not like super good at aijitsu, their sword draw technique. They mainly, what they have to fight with in that setting, the crabs rely on big heavy weapons like tetsubos and stuff versus the sword. So even though they carry a wakizashi or just a katana as a status symbol, you can see them walking around with big clubs or hammers and things of that nature. So if you want to go more that route just to fit the Ram, you could still have your katana and still rely on it. As a fighter, you could use either weapon.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, in this setting, I did draw from Legend of the Five Rings quite a bit, obviously, with a lot of the clan names and their styles and things. But also, your daisho can be, it doesn't have to be a katana and wakizashi in this setting. It could be a great axe and a hand axe if you're, you know, of that particular clan that makes sense for. So in the example of Ram, your tetsubo and a throwing axe could be your daisho. You know, that could
Or
be
a great Tetsubo.
Possibly.
Made
Tetsubos
from
are pretty great already, but
hefty branch. Yeah, I remember when we were, you know, I've been hit with a Tetsubo before. It doesn't feel good.
I don't imagine. Those things are beastly. But yeah, I mean, I imagine you could probably have one that was made of iron as opposed to wood with, you know, iron studs. And, you know, it might deal more damage. It would probably cost more. But that's kind of the, you know, we can talk price points and balance points and things of that nature. Cool.
Yeah. On the topic of NPC connections,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, I already posted it in there. So Silken Sky is my Sifu, but I have no aspirations or any grand designs for that NPC. So I am definitely leaving that in for what's the term? DM. Whatever.
Fuck about.
I leave it in your hands. However you want to use that NPC. You know,
Okay.
as frequently or not frequently as possible. You know.
Sure.
But yeah, so that would be the NPC that would be the strongest connection to Soren Crane. Would obviously be his teacher. So.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, it's one of those things. It was an experiment that I tried with White Lotus Black Jade, and I've been really happy with it. And it's not necessarily something that I think is specific to the setting, but because in particular in the setting, because where you come from, who you're connected to, seems to kind of matter a lot more than personal. You know, clan matters more than you do. Family matters more than you do. Your individual glory and name are not the most important things in your mind. It seems to be a fairly good way of making sure that all of the characters had roots. You know, that there was something back home. Even if you chose to leave it behind, there was something that tied you to the world. and so far it seemed to work really, really well in my home game. So it's definitely something that I wanted to port over into this as well. In addition to the secrets, that has also been a lot of fun to play around with. So,
Absolutely. I definitely think in going forward in a campaign, I'm going to draw on that as well. Just your concept there of, I mean, I'm a big fan of bonds.
mhm.
Taking that from like Dungeon World, bringing that into the 5e or just in games in general. I think Fate even does something similar with the aspects, but using the secrets and connections to NPC, because then that way you have something that you can use in the background, right? Like, this NPC, sends you a letter like, "Hey, come home, something really bad happened," or they get kidnapped or something, right? It gives you the ability to drive the story, or bring the story to the character versus a bunch of, as the D&D term goes, a bunch of murder hobos wandering the countryside, killing whatever they come across and taking its stuff.
They're just a bunch of members of the Ram clan. That's all.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, having hooks that are kind of generic or basic is always a good thing. Oh, the child is in trouble, or oh, there's lots of riches to be had, or there's wrong that's being done. Those kinds of hooks are really good to use, and it's a kind of a common language, if you will, amongst most D&D players. But being able to have something that's a real big hook that's already set in your lip as a player, to just be able to tug if I need to, or to really pull on it if I really want something to have a weighty personal gravity. I've got a built-in way to do that without having to try to invent something in the moment. So yeah, I think it'll be fun. But
So real quick on the names, the way you kept formatting the names and the clan descriptions, if I'm understanding it correctly, my character's name would be Luke, would be his first name, and Longway would be technically his family name.
so yeah, your surname, your family name comes first, and your
Okay.
given name, what people would call you and address you as, would be second, in the way that you would typically
Okay.
introduce yourself.
So technically, I don't think that Longway is his house name because he's trying to. It's an alias right now, so
He still might use it to introduce
that'll
himself,
have to come
though.
out. Yeah. Well, I would be using that because if I'm trying to not make it known who I am, which makes it interesting because usually you're trying to bring honor on your family name or your clan, but I am trying to avoid that. So I'm trying to bring honor to Longway, not, or maybe the Ram clan in general, but
Yeah, maybe.
So, okay.
Yeah, like you like the party may know my character. His name is actually Eugene, um, but he would introduce himself like to the public. If somebody was like, who are you? He would introduce himself as Soren Crane. That's the name that the monks gave him, or his Sifu gave him. So that would be what he would introduce himself as. So, and then you guys as the party could call him either or. He would answer to either or. So maybe more Soren Crane would just be in general. But if you really want to drive something home, like this is very important, you may address him by his name.
I love
Absolutely.
it. I'm going to be stepping out of my comfort zone, and it's awesome. Thanks for the opportunity, Jeremy.
Absolutely, man. Thank you guys for stepping up and volunteering and asking to be in this. It's usually like when I make a setting, I get to play in it, in my home games at least once, and then it kind of gets left behind, at least for a long period of time. So being able to kind of revisit one, not only recently but concurrently, that's kind of a unique thing that I've never done before. And hopefully it's something that I'm able to do justice to the campaign that I've already established and already have going, but also bring enough fresh things to it that keeps it interesting for me to go through, as well as for you guys. That is the aim, at least.
Well, we'll keep you on your toes anyway.
I'm used to that. I'm a pretty good dancer.
And if Dave is out of his comfort zone, I'm like, comfort zone, I don't even see the damn thing.
Now you know why I watched probably a month's worth of Wuxia movies back to back to back. Because
I don't know if I'm
I
going to be
was
able to do that.
Eastern story.
I've watched one so far, though.
I think I'm going to have to get the DVDs from Netflix again so I can get some of these movies, because like I want to see Hidden Fortress, and it's only available on DVD. So, or trying to find it on some bootleg site that might, you know.
For you, a movie that you definitely want to watch is one of the Ip Men's. I don't know if it's the first one or the second one, but he actually ends up fighting a gentleman who does wudang in it.
Nice.
No, sorry, Hungar. He on top of the table. The last gentleman.
I'll bump that up on my list then.
Yeah. The second one, he ends up they're fighting on a table, and the last guy that he fights, who's like the main boss of the area, he's the main crime boss, master per se in the area, but he does Hungar, so that'd be a really good one to watch.
I think that's Sammy Hong.
It
I'm
is.
not mistaken. Yeah, he's a very, very prolific, or was a very, very prolific martial arts store back in the 70s and 80s. Very cool gentleman.
Still doing it. Well, I don't know if he was in Ip Man not too long ago, and he has a couple movies out where he plays the lead in it.
Yeah, he does a lot of fight choreography now, fight direction, and then you see him in a role where he'll have one fight in a movie where he's got a smaller part, but he's still kicking butt. Like a lot of them, they do it until they're very old. It's pretty impressive.
So,
And Scott, it's Shun Wu Sukyo.
Zhan Wu Sukiko.
Sean Wu
Sukiko. Sukiko being my daughter's name. Suki means love, Eiko means little one, and we just smashed it together, so it's Sukiko. We call her Suki.
Yeah, we'll be calling you Suki.
That works.
yeah, I will.
Nickname.
Which is really funny to me because like I've watched quite a bit of True Blood, and so like I can't hear that name without hearing it in that terrible Louisiana accent. But
So,
go ahead, Carol. Sorry.
oh yeah, would there be another movie that you guys would recommend for me to watch for my character? I watched the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon so far.
There's a lot of ones out there that are really good. As far as Snake in particular, the only one that I can think of, Jackie Chan does some pretty Snake-like moves. I don't know that I've ever seen him actually do Snake Kung Fu, but I'm sure he probably does.
Yeah, Shadow.
Yeah. As to whether it's on Netflix or not is going to be the problem.
Yeah, probably
There is
not
a,
Netflix, but you can probably Google Jackie Chan and Snake. And
Yeah, I'll do it right now, hon, because I'm linking stuff in the chat for everybody.
There is
I got a
a
couple in there.
sweet little gem of a movie called The Quest, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. That is a steaming pile of crap. But
It has a ballerina dancer in it. Are you serious?
but it has this awesome combat at the end. Like the last half of the movie is this contest of all these different martial arts forms. And there's the one guy that does the 5 animal style, and Snake is one of the styles that he showcases. And it's pretty impressive to watch. That's the movie that I saw as a kid that I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like these martial arts styles actually look like the animal that they're named after. That's really cool. So other than that, the movie is a complete piece of tripe. But if you can track it down and stomach the rest of it, that part's worth it.
I wouldn't be surprised if they have the fight scene on YouTube somewhere.
I am sure it is, yeah.
And
YouTube
then you
is your
just
friend.
cut through the crap.
Yep. You want to miss the part where Jean-Claude Van Damme is a street mime who takes care of orphans?
Oh, I gotta see that, man.
it's gold in the worst way possible.
Yeah, that's what Alan was describing earlier as cheese factor.
Yeah. Well, that's not even wuxia. That's Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't know exactly what you would call that.
Alan and I just linked the exact same movie, same clip and everything.
Nice.
Yep.
Great minds.
I would definitely have to say, gosh, what was it? Probably early 2000. I was working at a Kmart back when they still existed, and yeah, pretty much I'd get my paycheck and then I would just hit the DVD section, and just about every Jackie Chan and Jet Li movie that was on DVD, I would like just gobble it up.
Actually, one that is on Netflix that you could watch, hun, is Shaolin Temple. It has Jet Li when he was really, really young, and it's very brief, but he does. There's a it's pretty much the Chinese segue or montage, 80s montage for Chinese kung fu movies, but it's Jet Li doing a bunch of different styles with different weapons and stuff like that. And I do believe Snake is in there, but that would give you a good context to the movement in that. Just watching the movies alone, a lot of Jackie Chan, Jet Li. If you're looking for Shaolin based, definitely go with like Jet Li, Jackie Chan. They're going to be the ones that probably best fit the bill. And even if you're going real traditional Shaolin, then that's Jet Li all the way.
Yeah, or you could just
I'm not
Google.
going to watch a lot of movies. Let's
Actually,
be honest. Maybe 1 or 2 more is going to be my movie limit. I am not a moviegoer.
You don't really even have to watch movies. If you just go to YouTube and then just Google the Kung Fu style, you can usually find people at tournaments or exhibitions, usually probably no more than 20, 30 minutes, if it's even that long, because usually a kata is no more than probably 10 minutes. And you can just, you'll see them like at a gym or even an instructor just kind of giving basic lessons on the different styles.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. But I want to kind of sit through 1 or 2 of the movies too, because that's part of the cinematics of the thing. It's not just the how to act like a snake fighter, but the whole, how do you say it, wuxia?
Yeah. Wuxia.
Wuxia,
There's a couple different ways.
wuxia is sort of movie
Wuxia.
culture that's kind of going on here too.
Yeah, and as far as that kind of thing goes, not necessarily showcasing the specific styles, but in particular, a couple of films that kind of do what I think is a pretty good job of balancing between historical and fantastical. 47 Ronin is a great example of that. It is very much a Hollywoodized type movie. Keanu Reeves is the main character. But it's actually a pretty decent film, and it's got a really cool depiction of kind of Asian style magic and things of that nature kind of rolled into it. That's pretty entertaining. There's another one that I don't know that many people can necessarily deal with how wacky it gets, but it's called Journey to the West. It's a very cheeky kind of comedy. But it has a lot of really cool fantasy elements kind of to it as well. Not all of them are what I would call cool, but there's some cool ones in there.
It was totally a good movie. It was.
It's worth a watch, especially if you're maybe if you're a little less than sober whenever you're watching it.
And Journey to the West has been re-envisioned so many different times. It's a classic story that people just retell at different times. So
it's their fairy tales. It's one of their fairy tales, like the Monkey King in that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then there's another one called Forbidden Kingdom that has both Jet Li and Jackie Chan in it. It's an English movie. And
one of the greatest fight scenes ever in a movie.
It was a pretty epic scene.
The only one that was better was Jet Li and Donnie Yen in Hero.
In the rain.
Yeah, that spear battle. Spear is my weapon. I have a 7.5-foot Shaolin spear in my bedroom.
Hero is another really good one. It's also just a really entertaining story.
I definitely like Forbidden Kingdom because you can see, I mean, you have Jet Li using Tai Chi and you have Jackie Chan using drunken boxing or drunken fist. And then all of a sudden Jet Li switches to Mantis and then Jackie Chan. It's like one of my favorite lines there, and he's all like, "Oh, mantis style. It's great for catching bugs, but not tigers." And then he goes into his tiger stance. And what's great about that movie too is whenever they're in their styles, they make the animal noises too, not the characters, but in the background. So as like Jackie Chan's making his tiger strikes, you hear the tiger roar, and as Jet Li is making his mantis grips and pulls and stuff, you hear that, that bug rattle. And I thought that was really a neat trick in the movie.
I think they actually even take that a step further in, I think it is Journey to the West, where the one guy has kind of tiger style martial arts, and at one point he comes rushing into battle, and there's actually like a spectral tiger that like is like over him or something like that, and it actually makes the claw attacks whenever he goes in. There's some beautiful cinematography in a lot of their fighting.
Yeah, what I've always wanted to do in an Oriental game is not necessarily on the martial arts, focusing on the animal aspects, even though that would be cool too, and I've seen that done before. But I was focusing mainly on the zodiac, and as whatever you were doing, your zodiac spirit would reflect, or would the spirit would animate behind you. So if you was a dragon and you were fighting, then you would have the spectral of the dragon, and he would flow over your arms and those kinds of things. So those visuals.
Yeah, as far as like other things that kind of help set the setting, as far as just understanding the culture, Memoirs of a Geisha is a phenomenal film about that has a pretty good look at Japanese culture in general. It's a little anachronistic as far as when it's set, but it's kind of like the dying off of the feudal era in their society, so it's kind of cool. It's a good look. And Last Samurai is kind of the same time frame, also a pretty good film. Seven Samurai is a fantastic movie. It is very old.
It is. If you could withstand old movies in 3.5 hours long.
Yeah, it is a very long film.
There's a reason why he remade it into an anime, Samurai 7, later on, so that way he could do all the stuff that he wanted to in it.
Or you just watch Magnificent Seven and. Okay.
And then we're in Tyler's Western. What?
There's a really good one that's a Japanese film that is incredibly bloody called 13 Assassins. If I put anything else on a must watch list, it would probably be House of Flying Daggers. It's another one that is not only a very good creative movie as far as the fights go, but it's also a pretty good story. It's a very good love story. But we can talk cinema probably all night long without running out of things to discuss.
I could talk woo.
Yeah, it's.
Well, I'm
it's
starting to get the 10-year-old grandson. Why are you taking so long, Grandma?
It's definitely a genre that I've come to appreciate a lot more. But as far as the game goes, I don't know that there's anything else that you guys would like to go over before we call it a night. So we'll do a last call, round 2, if you will. Dave, you just unmuted. What you got? Hit me.
I was just going to say, are we going to play Thursday then? I'm just kidding.
No, sadly.
Dang.
It's still a ways off.
I'm busy Thursday. Never mind. I play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
I've got to get stuff ready for you guys now. So I've got to get Kung Fu Styles done and racial write-ups and all kinds of stuff. So I got my work cut out for me. But we will be playing our first session on Thursday, June 1st, starting at 7:30 Central. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really excited about it. It's a fantastic group of players. And I chose you guys specifically because all of you are very kind of go with the flow people from what I've been able to see. I haven't had the chance to play with Scott at all yet, but I have seen him play in a couple of games. The rest of you I have at least played with, if not run games for. So I think it's going to be a pretty chill group, which is something that I like in my games. I don't like a lot of constant rules questions and debates and things. So I like people who are in it for the story and are okay with being on board with a singular vision. And I think that all of you guys are very much those kinds of players. So I'm really looking forward to kind of getting into this setting really deep and kind of getting into the political things and a lot of the personal ties that you guys are going to be creating for your characters and pulling those strings. And then sprinkled in all amongst that, wheel kicking Oni in the face and, cutting things in half with katanas and clawing things.
What do you mean I can't catch Dave's Tetsubo with chopsticks? That's a totally legit move.
I could be way wrong. I may be in way over my head here. Who knows?
Just because it's not in the rule book doesn't mean it couldn't happen. I mean,
what if I spin a point of inspiration?
Nat 20.
So yes.
I mean, it says right here, I can use any simple weapon as a martial arts weapon, and chopsticks are as simple as it gets.
Yep. So like I said, I could be in deep shit. I could be way wrong, and only time will tell.
Well, the one thing, if you even have watched any of mine that I'm in, I cannot guarantee there will not be some tomfoolery and maybe a little bit of shenanigans because I'm just a smart ass.
Oh, dude, I'm a very sarcastic motherfucker, and yeah, levity is a part of Dungeons and Dragons. That's what that ampersand actually stands for. You need to have that in the game, as far as I'm concerned. And obviously, if we're telling, Curse of Strahd game or something like that, then yeah, you want to cut back on the levity as much as you can. You don't want to, crack jokes in front of Cthulhu or whatever. But
he likes him so much.
That's true.
He tips so well.
His tentacles just kind of vibrate. So, yeah, but a little bit of levity, in my opinion, is a fantastic thing. And I mean, ultimately, the point of all of this is to have fun. And if you can't laugh and have some jokes that go around the table, a little bit of immature humor, then what the hell are you doing at the table?
I do have to say though, I am
go for it.
surprised that playing in an Oriental Adventure and not one ninja or assassin in the party. Very surprised. I almost was like guaranteed somebody's gonna go for Way of the Shadow or an assassin.
Yep, I have both in my home group. I have a Way of the Shadow monk, and my wife is playing a geisha assassin of all things. And she's doing a very, very good job. She's kind of scary, honestly. But anyways, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, guys. Thank you very much for doing this tonight. And for those of you who may have been tuning in, thank you very much for watching. Those of you who may be watching later on, I appreciate it very much. Stick around, come back June the 1st, and watch when all of this thing goes up in flames. No, I'm positive that this is going to be a lot of fun, and I can hardly wait. So until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.